Have you ever lain beside someone, feeling the warmth of their body just inches from yours, yet wondering if they truly love you? Because they've never said it. You begin to question your own heart. Is this love? Is it enough? Why do they fix your car, bring you your favorite snack when you're sick, or turn up when no one else does, yet never utter the words? Why do their actions shout devotion, but their mouth remains sealed? And here's the question that lingers, one that few dare to ask aloud. What if "I love you" is the most overrated phrase in the world? You've been taught to look for words. Say what you feel. Tell me you love me. If they don't say it, it's not real. But somewhere deeper, beneath social scripts and romance tropes, you've felt something more potent than language. Love that doesn't bloom in poetry. Love that doesn't thrive on declarations. Love that's quiet, committed, and sometimes, agonizingly, wordless. This is not about miscommunication or fear of vulnerability. It's something deeper. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Those hidden parts of ourselves we can't articulate, but that shape our relationships more powerfully than words ever could. This is love through the unconscious. This is love that doesn't say "I love you," but lives it. You might not remember the exact moment it started. Maybe you noticed it slowly. The way they always remembered your coffee order, or how they stood slightly between you and traffic when you walked down the street. You thought it was politeness. You thought it was just habit. But habits don't have hearts, people do. So you waited for the words. Because love, you thought, needed to be spoken to be real. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, wouldn't agree. Jung believed that the unconscious speaks through symbols, dreams, and patterns. And when it comes to love, he argued, we are far more fluent in symbolic action than verbal expression. You don't say love, you live it. You become it. Or perhaps you don't. According to Jung, most people don't operate entirely from their conscious minds. The decisions we make, the people we care for, the actions we take in relationships are deeply influenced by inner archetypes, emotional imprints, and personal mythologies. One of those archetypes is the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men, the inner masculine in women, or more broadly, the contrasexual self we project onto our partners. So when someone quietly brings you soup when you're sick, drives you home without question, or sacrifices their own comfort to ease yours, what you're seeing may not be just a nice person. You may be witnessing the projection of their anima animus, a part of themselves they cannot name, but which moves them to protect, nurture, or guard you. This projection often makes people act with profound tenderness and intensity, even if they can't explain why. They won't say they love you. They might not even know they do. But they'll show up when everyone else walks away. They'll remember the things you never asked them to. They'll listen when you're silent, and leave when they know you need space, not comfort. Real story number 1, the Lunchbox. There's a man, let's call him Eli, who's been married for 20 years. His wife tells friends, "He's never said I love you once without me saying it first." But every morning, Eli wakes up before dawn and packs her lunch. He cuts the sandwiches into triangles, just like her mother did. On rainy days, he sneaks an umbrella into her bag. He never talks about feelings. He forgets anniversaries. But when she was diagnosed with cancer, he shaved his head before she lost her hair. He never said the words, but he became them. Love, according to Jung, is often a process of individuation, the psychological integration of all the unconscious and conscious parts of the self. People on this journey often express love as acts of integration, caring for others in ways they haven't yet learned to name. Some people express their affection wordlessly, not because they're cold, but because they love in a native language you've forgotten how to hear. You've been taught to seek romance through sensation, the thrill of newness, of fireworks, of the grand confession. But Jung would ask you to look for the patterns. Do they remember your favorite song? Do they tilt their body toward you, even when you're not speaking? Do they place their phone face down when you talk? These are not just habits. They're symbols, soul expressions, not mere gestures. The unconscious, Jung wrote, is constantly expressing itself in symbols, not unlike a dream. Love, too, is a waking dream when you know how to interpret the signs. Real story number 2, the broken heater. Maya lived in a drafty apartment with a busted heater in Chicago. Her boyfriend Marcus never said, "I love you." She told friends she wasn't sure if he cared. Then one December morning, she woke up to find 6 space heaters in every room. He'd borrowed money to buy them. He never mentioned it. He simply said, "It'll be warm now." He didn't need to say the words. She never asked again. And yet there's a paradox. For those who long for verbal affirmation, this kind of love can feel hauntingly incomplete. A kind of phantom limb, present but intangible. You begin to wonder, if love isn't named, can it still exist? Is action enough? This is where emotional tension sharpens. Because your soul might recognize this kind of devotion, but your heart might still yearn for the clarity of language. And here we fall into the shadow again. Jung argued that what we crave in others often reflects the disowned parts of ourselves. If you need to hear "I love you" daily, it may be because you've been taught your worth is only real when validated aloud. But those who love silently may have been raised to believe that doing is more honest than saying, and that words are cheap. What happens when these two archetypes fall in love? They orbit each other, trying to bridge a gap neither can name. One waits for words. The other thinks actions are louder than anything spoken. Both wonder why they feel unseen. And yet, both are loving, in their own unconscious way. You begin to wonder, if they love me, why won't they say it? Not in passing, not in text, not in those quiet moments, when the room holds only you and the hum of something tender and unspeakable. They do everything right, show up, take care, remember, but the words never come. And you start to feel like you're asking for something unreasonable. Are you? Carl Jung didn't believe so, but he would ask you to look deeper, not at them, but within yourself, and then again, back into them. Not just the relationship on the surface, but the unseen architectures of memory, fear, and inherited pain that shape how we love. Jung coined the term complex to describe emotionally charged clusters of ideas, memories, and perceptions that shape our behavior unconsciously. Everyone has them. You can have a mother complex, a power complex, or most relevant here, a love complex. A love complex often develops in childhood, forged in the early years when love was modeled not through abundance, but through confusion. Maybe you were given affection only when you performed well. Maybe your parents were present but emotionally mute. Maybe love came in the form of worry, control, or sacrifice, but never warmth. And if you grew up in such a silence, words like "I love you" can feel foreign, awkward in the mouth, like a language you never learned to speak fluently. So, what happens when such a person falls in love? They act it out. They fix things. They protect you. They make sure your tires are full, that you don't walk alone at night, that there's always food in the fridge when you come over. They do everything love does, but say none of what love says. This is not coldness. It is legacy. It is the shadow of love passed down through generations, now playing out silently in their hands, not their voice. Real story number 3. The unsent letter. There's a woman named Talia. Her father raised her alone after her mother passed. When she was 8, he was a stoic man, an engineer who built bridges, but never once told her she was beautiful, smart, or loved. When she moved out at 18, she found a sealed envelope in her suitcase. It was a letter he'd written, but never gave her. In it were words he could never speak aloud. "You're the best part of my life." She later said he was always there, at every concert, every graduation. "I just didn't know how much it cost him to show up, until I read that." His complex silenced him. But his actions never did. When people struggle to say "I love you," it's often not about you. It's about their relationship to love itself, to vulnerability, surrender, and the possibility of being hurt. To say "I love you" is to risk everything. Jung believed that saying the words opens the gates to the self, the integrated, true being. We often hide behind ego defenses and archetypes, and to approach that inner self is to touch the divine and the dangerous. The soul doesn't surrender easily. It guards its depths. For some, then, the words are too dangerous. They are the final leap, and many have learned, through pain, that leaping can lead to abandonment. They would rather show up than say it, because showing up feels safe, measurable, quiet, unthreatening. But you? you might long for the words. Real story number 4, the long commute. James drove an hour each way to see Layla every Friday. Never missed a week in 3 years. He fixed her leaky pipes, helped her move apartments, held her when her dog died. But whenever she said, "I love you," he would smile, say nothing, and kiss her forehead. She thought it was because he didn't feel the same. After they broke up, she learned from his sister. He loved you more than he's ever loved anyone. He just didn't know how to say it. Our dad used to hit us if we cried, told us words made us weak. Love lived in his silence, because pain lived in his throat. So where does this leave you, the one who wants to hear the words? This is where the story gets complicated, and deeply human. Because love is not only what we give, it's also what we need. And needing to hear "I love you" is not shallow. It's not petty. It is longing, a sacred ache to be seen fully, not just cared for. Jung would tell you that your need is part of your own complex, perhaps a response to your upbringing, or maybe to your soul's blueprint. You want to be met not just with acts, but with meaning made audible. Language matters to you because it's how you understand connection. And when someone doesn't say it, despite showing it, you begin to doubt the truth of their love. Or worse, your worth. This tension, their silence versus your need, is the root of so much heartbreak. But it's not unsolvable. Jung would suggest this is the alchemical moment, the collision of two inner worlds, each with its own shadow, meeting at the crucible of a relationship. Here's the truth most relationships miss. Love languages aren't just about preference. They are about psyche, about survival, trauma, archetype, and personal myth. When someone shows love without saying it, it's because they've made a home in the unconscious. When someone needs to hear the words, it's because they've made meaning through voice and symbol. Neither is wrong. Both are real. But they speak different dialects of the same emotional language. You're at dinner. You've been together for months, maybe years. The candles flicker low, casting that golden light people always say is flattering. You've been laughing. The air feels light. So you say it. "I love you." They look up. Not startled, not cold. Just quiet. A pause too long. A breath too thin. And then, the sentence you've come to dread. "You know how I feel." But do you? Here lies the emotional fulcrum. A fault line in the human condition, where the desire to be understood meets the inability to express. Not everyone survives this point. This is where couples begin to drift, where devotion becomes doubt, where actions, no matter how devoted, start to feel hollow in the absence of articulation. You begin to ask yourself, if they really loved me, wouldn't they want to say it? But what if love, real, wrenching, unconscious love, doesn't want anything in the way you've been taught? What if it simply is, and the problem lies not in its absence, but in its refusal to conform to your script? Carl Jung warned us about this. He said that relationships are not just between two people, they are between four. You, your partner, and both of your unconscious selves. In Jungian psychology, when your conscious needs, like hearing "I love you," clash with their unconscious fears, like being vulnerable through language, what arises is not just conflict, but a collision of archetypes. Let's revisit the two in play. You may embody the lover archetype, drawn to words, emotional transparency, communion. You need to hear love to trust it. They may carry the wounded warrior, or even hermit archetype. Their love is protection, provision, constancy, but their voice has been silenced by past harm. This isn't about who is right. It's about the emotional bilingualism that most relationships require, and few are prepared to practice. Real story number 5. The Arguing Hands. Julian and Saria were in love, but different. He wrote her poems, left her voice notes every morning. She loved his softness, but found herself struggling. "Why don't you ever say anything back?" he asked once. She looked stunned. "I made you dinner. I drove 6 hours to see you. Doesn't that say something?" To her, showing up was everything. To him, words were the currency of the soul. They broke up, not from lack of love, but from mismatched expression. Jung would argue they were trapped in projections. Each projected their preferred form of love onto the other. Julian projected his inner feminine, his need for emotional reciprocity, his anima, onto Saria, expecting her to meet him in language. Saria projected her own wounded animus, shaped by a father who never praised but always provided, onto Julian, believing his love would look like deeds, not sonnets. When projections are not made conscious, they rule us. They make us fall in love with someone not as they are, but as we hope they'll become. They make us feel unloved, not because love is absent, but because it doesn't look how we imagined. The emotional tragedy of many relationships isn't that love isn't present. It's that it's unrecognized, untranslatable. So what happens when love is expressed, but not in the form you crave? Two paths emerge. One, you begin to resent them. You interpret their silence as emotional withholding. You feel starved, even as they feed you in other ways. You begin to believe they are incapable of love, when in fact, they may be loving you with everything they have, just not in the dialect you understand. Two, they begin to feel unappreciated. They think, I'm doing everything I can. Why isn't it enough? They feel judged not for their love, but for their inability to verbalize it. They withdraw further, now not only silent but guarded. The spiral continues. Jung believed that to love another is to undergo individuation. Together, a joint becoming. This doesn't mean assimilation, where one partner morphs to please the other. It means mutual evolution. A journey towards psychological wholeness, where both people recognize and integrate not just each other's strengths, but each other's shadows. And so the question becomes, can someone who loves silently learn to speak? Can someone who speaks love learn to hear it in silence? Real story number 6, the first time. Rachel had always needed to hear it. After 2 years, she was ready to leave. I know he cares, she said, but I feel invisible. One night, she told him she was done. She couldn't keep translating his actions into feelings. He sat in silence, then whispered, "My mom said I love you," the night before she OD'd. I stopped trusting words after that. I thought if I just stayed every day, that would mean more. She stayed. 6 months later, he said it first. We often think the absence of words means the absence of love. But sometimes it means love is so deep it terrifies the speaker, or that the speaker learned long ago that words were unreliable currency. If you are someone who shows love through action, know this: silence over time becomes a story. If you never speak, they will write their own ending, one that might not include you. If you are someone who needs to hear it, know this: some people love you in a language they never learned to speak. They are not broken, but you deserve to feel secure. You deserve translation. Both of you are right. Both of you are loving. But love requires not just emotion or action or words. It requires interpretation and sometimes transformation. They say love is simple, that it's instinctual, that you just know. But if that were true, why do people so often leave relationships still in love? Why do they walk away from someone who never betrayed them? Never stopped showing up, never stopped caring, just never said it? Because love, for all its poetry, is not just about feeling. It's about meaning. And without a shared meaning, even love can feel lonely. Carl Jung would have called this the failure of symbolic connection, the inability of two psyches to find a bridge between their inner worlds. He believed that the human experience is mythic, and relationships are the stage on which those myths unfold. When you and your partner love in different dialects, when one speaks through words and the other through actions, you aren't just miscommunicating. You're trying to merge two entirely different personal mythologies. But this isn't a dead end. It's a threshold, a place where individuation, the process of becoming whole, can either expand or collapse. The question is, are you both willing to learn a new language? Not to erase your own, but to honor each other's? This is where Jung's concept of active imagination becomes essential. Active imagination, a psychological Rosetta Stone. Jung described active imagination as a method of dialoguing with the unconscious, not dreaming passively, but stepping into your inner world and interacting with the parts of yourself you usually ignore, your fears, your hopes, your shadows. In love, active imagination becomes a mirror you hold up not just to yourself, but to your partner. You begin to ask, what does their silence remind me of from my past? What do I make their actions mean? When I don't hear "I love you," do I feel abandoned or unseen? Or unworthy, and why? You begin to do the hardest thing. Separate what is yours from what is theirs. Real story number 7. The 2 journals. A couple, Anna and Theo, were on the verge of separating. She told him, "You don't love me." He was stunned. "I do everything for you," he said. A therapist introduced them to the practice of shared journaling. Every week, they'd write letters to each other that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Words for her, time and space for him. In those journals, he could finally say, "I don't know how to say it when you're looking at me, but I feel it, all the time." 6 months later, he whispered the words aloud for the first time. She didn't cry. She just held his face and said, "I know." What Anna and Theo discovered wasn't just a communication tool. It was a ritual of translation. They created a middle space, a symbolic terrain, where both their forms of love could exist without competition. This is the only way forward for many couples. You must create a shared mythology. You must find your version of the journal, the ritual, the act that lets their silence be heard and your need be seen, not as opposites, but as 2 aspects of one greater whole. The work of love isn't natural, it's alchemical. There is a modern fantasy that love should be easy, that the right person just gets you. But Jung dismantled this myth by reminding us, the soul doesn't seek ease, it seeks evolution. Love is not ease, it is fire. And that fire either burns down what cannot last, or it forges a bond more durable than desire. For couples where love is unspoken but felt, this work is particularly sacred, because you are not just building a relationship, you are building a new language of the soul. Real story number 8, the little notes. Tom and Jessa were married for 12 years. He never said "I love you" first. Not once. But every Sunday, without fail, he folded the laundry and left a post-it on her pillow. Sometimes it was a joke, sometimes a single word, sometimes just a heart. She used to resent it. She wanted more. She wanted big cinematic declarations. Then one day, he missed a Sunday. The first time in 12 years. He was in the hospital, unconscious after a heart attack. When she went home to get his things, she found a stack of unused post-its in the drawer, and a note at the top that read, "If I ever stop leaving these, it means I can't, but I always will." She never asked for the words again. You learn something in these moments, something Jung always hinted at, but never reduced to instruction. Love isn't real because it's said. Love is real when it becomes a sacred pattern, and those patterns vary. For some, it's holding hands in silence. For others, it's waking up before dawn to warm the car. For some, it's saying "I love you" every day without fail. And for others still, it's buying the kind of bread you like even when you never asked for it. All of it is real, if it is mutually witnessed. That's the difference. Not whether it's spoken, but whether it's received. How do you bridge the gap? You begin by telling the truth. Not just to them, to yourself. You say, "When I don't hear the words, I feel unsure, and that's hard for me. I know you show love through action, and I want to learn how to see it better. Can we find a way to meet in the middle? Maybe that means weekly check-ins. Maybe that means a note in the lunchbox. Maybe that means tolerating the discomfort of saying what was once unspeakable." None of this is easy, but it is real. And it is the only thing strong enough to keep 2 psyches, 2 stories, walking together through time. One couple made it 73 years without ever saying "I love you." When asked about it at the husband's funeral, the wife said, "He never had to. He was love. Every day, every hour. When he fixed the roof, when he made my tea, when he sat beside me when I cried and never tried to fix it. He never said it, but I heard it, loud." Then she smiled. "I said it enough for both of us." So maybe that's the truth. Maybe the deepest love isn't always heard. Maybe it's witnessed. Maybe it's deciphered. Maybe it's a lifelong act of translation. And maybe, just maybe, the soul knows when it's loved, even in silence.